Welcome to this 7 interactive webinar. My name is Espen. I'm going to talk today about the pictures and editorial content for the most part on websites and on and how I use it and how I present things online on vg.no, which is the newspaper I work for. And also talk a bit about new technologies, new possibilities, and how you as a photographer need to think when it comes to presenting stories online, and then especially on mobile phones, which is the platform that is mostly used now for watching news, watching features, watching pictures, watching everything really. So I'm going to share with you my screen, and then I'm going to start talking. Give me 1 second. Whoop. Voila. So my daily job is not to be a photographer. It's actually to be a picture editor in the VG newspaper. But the last 1.5 years, I've been moving away from being a classic picture editor and becoming more of a producer, meaning that I do make online presentations of features, picture stories, essays, documentaries, and so on for the newspaper. And that's basically what I do, together with, of course, selecting pictures and finding pictures for stories and so on. And that's my daily job, and it's a place called The Hub in VG, where we are today 4 people working with design and presentation. We have also a guy who is in charge of text, reading text, building up text, and changing text from the journalists. So what I basically do every day is to work on new features and find new ways to show them and present the pictures online. So today it's really a challenge, because we have so many platforms we're going to present on. It's not only mobile phones, it's laptops, and it's iPads, and it's all kind of different screens. And of course, we still also print the newspaper, which is for VG's part, and I think still for many magazines and newspapers, a very important part of their product line because of advertisements. And so an image today is just not an image. It should work on a laptop, it should work on a mobile phone, and then you have video, which should also work on all these different devices. So and the technology around it is still in constant development, meaning that you have some limitations and you have some things opening up, making it easier to do new ways of presenting stories. But as I said, I'm going to focus mostly on mobile phones. And the reason for this is because most people now consume news and editorial content on mobile phones. It's changed quite fast. In the US, it's among both young and older people. It's growing rapidly. In the US in 2019, 72% of young people between 18 and 29 turn to mobile devices for news. That's 72% going up from 34% in 2013. And this is just continuing, and we see that in VG as well. That's basically where most people read and watch their news now. So that means that we as photographers as well need to adapt to this and to be ready to work for something else than a spread in a magazine. And that's also hard for many, because it demands a different kind of focus. Before, you had a camera and you went out and you did a photo essay. Maybe you worked for a week, 2 weeks, a month, and the only thing you focused on was the pictures. Today, you might end up being both a filmmaker, you might be a director because you need to edit the films. You might also be a designer because you need to think about how this will look online. also an editor because you're going to edit your work, and of course you're also a photographer. So the challenge is, of course, to take on all these different things that you need to do and work with today, and still keep the focus on the project and the story you work with. And then there's this huge dilemma, which is that most photographers that I know, at least, shoot horizontal, but the news and the users, they consume it in vertical. So I mean, the pictures are horizontal, but they need to fit on vertical screens. And that's a challenge, of course, because we still shoot most of the pictures horizontal. So how to kind of adapt this to mobile devices? And there is, because of the mobile content, you have an extreme need for visual content. You need a lot of pictures or video or both in a lot of stories you make, because while in a newspaper, a printed magazine, you had maybe 8 pages where you used some few pictures on every page. Today on mobile phones, when you're going to read a long feature, you need a lot of pictures to help viewers also be engaged in the story, not only by the text, but also with the visuals. And then, of course, you have different publication tools for the different media houses. So, I mean, some media houses might have some kind of limitations for what they can do online. Others might have other limitations. So that's also makes it harder for a photographer to go out there and shoot specifically for different, especially as a freelancer, it's difficult because you kind of need to know what kind of possibilities each media house have when it comes to present their work. So how do I work? I'm going to go through some different steps in my process, and I'm going to talk both because I still shoot some pictures, maybe 1 or 2 stories every year, and then I'm going to show you how I work with different features that I produce in VG, and I'm also gonna show you how I use others' work to make wider features. Sorry. So this is a story that I did let's see, I'm just gonna move away from this Q&A part. Voila. So I'm going to just show you a short story I did last year. This is about the aftermath of the COVID-19 in Norway, where an investigative journalistic team from VG was going to find out what happened to the most vulnerable people in the society when everything closed down. So one of the stories we were going to do was about this young boy who lost his grandmother in suicide during the pandemic, and where the health nurses at his school were moved from working at the school and were moved into COVID-19 testing instead. So he was kind of alone, didn't have many places to go to when this happened, and that was kind of the story we made about him. So when I do this, it's basically, I know in advance what the story will be. I talked to the journalist, and we kind of know what the story will be. We sit down, we do an interview with him, and by listening to the interview and talking with the reporter, I kind of build up a visual storyline for the project, where I in my head make some key images that will be important to have. And for example, he describes how every day when he goes to school, he has to pass the graveyard where his grandmother is buried, and he tells us that every day he stops and visits the grave. So that's, of course, a picture. And I know that also will be part of the text. So that's kind of how I think and talk with the journalists. And that's one of the most important things when it comes to these more close personal stories, is that the text and the visuals kind of go hand in hand through the story. So I spend time with him in his home where he lives together with his parents. I join him when he goes to school, and I just like spend time with him basically. And I know things from the story that the reporter will write about, how he was sitting playing PlayStation when he got the news that his mother was dead, grandmother, sorry, and all these things I also photograph. I joined him for basketball training because he told us that that was his kind of way out of the heavy thinking and things like this. And at the end, then when I've done all these different kind of pictures, I start to mock up a story online. In VG, we use a specific tool for the articles. We have kind of two departments, the hub where I work, where we do these features, special features, which is inside something, not WordPress, but it's similar to WordPress. And then we have a different department who works on more building specific stories from scratch, meaning that they sit and code the stories and build them from zero and up to finished work. But these stories that I work on is made inside this create universe where you upload pictures, you move pictures, and you select what you want to be big and where you want the text and so on. And it has quite a lot of limitations, meaning that we have to take that into consideration when we build the stories. So here it's like, it starts with this young boy, of course, and goes through this nurse who was forced away from his school to work with the COVID-19 testing. And then it's basically to try and combine the pictures and the text so it all flows together. So the story is told with the text, but it's also told with the pictures. So in some sequences, the text describes how he walks to the grave, past the grave, how he stops, and things like this. And then it's natural also to use these pictures on those places. And then, so that's how we kind of build the stories. And in VG, we very often work together with the reporters. So it's not only the text that decides where and what kind of pictures we're going to use, but it's also that the pictures kind of influence how the text is written. Because there's no doubt that the visual part of this this presentation is quite important for how the public and the readers get engaged in the story itself. So how I think and work when I do this kind of stories is that I need to be very focused on the story. This is, of course, depending on what kind of story you work on. But when very often it's stories that has 1, 2, or 3 main characters in it. So it's important to focus on those people. And I always work freely. It's not that I kind of limit myself in my creativity when I work, but it's still, I have to have the story in my back head. And as I said, the images and text should work together. And you also have to remember the format, because on mobile phones, of course, the images will be cropped to verticals, while I shoot 99.9% of the time in horizontal. And then, of course, it's also to think about how to make this, the viewers or the readers to care about the story. What kind of pictures will kind of get their attention and get a sense of this guy or this woman you photograph, and how to keep that attention in place when the viewer starts to read the article. Online formats very often invites to a lot of images, but still I'm strict with myself. I try to limit the number of images depending on the text length, of course. But it's important I think it's almost more important online and on mobile phones that the reader doesn't feel that it's one image after another and they all look almost the same. And also the question about video, I use video, but it needs to have a journalistic value. If not, it's a hassle for the viewer. It suddenly pops up a video that takes a lot of broadband width and so on. So I use it when it's important for the story. So, and also with these projects, it's important to remember that the viewer very often has limited time. You compete against, not only in Norway, we don't only compete against other Norwegian newspapers, we compete against the whole English-speaking world and every newspaper and magazine out there, really. So we need to get their attention. And I also think a lot about finding a photographic style that can be consistent in the story. So in one kind of story, you choose to shoot it this way. In another kind of story, you maybe choose to shoot it in a different way. And this is an example of that, where this is also part of the same series as I showed you earlier. So this is in Trondheim in Norway. And this story is about a woman working in the police who is investigating abuse against children. And during the pandemic, they had to put a lot of cases on hold because of lack of places to investigate and lack of places to question kids. And so we met her, and the story was about her and her job and how she experienced the lockdown. But it's also about the kids and the place children's house that had to be locked down. So I chose to shoot her in a very classic way. And then I went into this children's house where they do all these interviews with kids and shoot that in a much harder, flashy way. So I had kind of two styles on the pictures and two different sizes on the pictures in the story. That the interior pictures was shot very like straight on with flash, and that the story and the pictures on her were more reportage style. And then I combined them in the story, like every second picture was of her and the interior pictures. So that's also I think to remember when you're going to work with a story, that you develop a style that can kind of help the reader to understand the story even more. Especially important is that if the story is complicated or has several characters, to find a way to shoot them and so it's possible to follow the story the whole way through. So to make this project online, it's also about teamwork. So in VG, we have many photographers, employed photographers, and some freelance photographers, and we try to talk before they go out to do a story about how we can solve it, what could be nice to do, should we do video, should we have graphics or other things. You know, where should the story go? Do we have any limitations when it comes to the story? What kind of possibilities do we have? Is there a storyline we can work on in advance? Sometimes that's possible. Other times they just have to go out and shoot and see what they come back with. And in the field, as I said, it's important to focus on telling the story. And it might also be important to do video, even though you're not supposed to use it or you're not planning to use it in an online presentation. It might be important for, let's say, social media promotion of the story. So video is also good to have. And it's important to hunt for the visual parts of the story. I mean, very often in VG, it might be stories that's already happened. You meet people that has experienced something, and you meet them now 2 weeks after, 2 months after, and they're going to talk about something that happened before. And very often we ask for private pictures to use and other things, but also for the photographer to look for visual parts in the story that he or she can photograph and use as documentation in the project. I'm just going to leave and see if there's any questions here. It's good. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A field here in Zoom, and I'm going to try and answer them at the end of the talk. It's a bit difficult to answer while I'm talking because I need to leave the presentation to answer. So if you have questions, please just write them in the Q&A, and I will be in there and answer. So that's in the field when you work. Of course, for me as a producer, most of the work is done afterwards when all the pictures are done and the video is done and everything. That's when my job kind of starts. But the more planning you do, the very often the better the project ends up to be, and also it turns out to be much more complete in a way. So that's also important to remember when you work on this kind of projects. So for freelancers, I think it's important to remember that it depends on which media house you work for, where you have to find out what is the limitations or possibilities, what can I do? And of course, also to don't restrict yourself, be open to explore new formats and new ways of shooting. Because even though it's on a small mobile screen, there's a lot of possibilities to use pictures in a very creative and nice way. I'm going to show you some things after. So when it comes to teamwork, this is an example of a teamwork where I work together with a journalist, Ronnie. I work very often with him. This is also in the same series as I showed you earlier. So this is about a former drug addict or two former drug addicts that they were thrown out of rehabilitation during the COVID-19 lockdown, and just thrown out on the streets from one day to another. So what happened to them? So the story was that one of them committed suicide. The other one has come back on his feet and lives a very nice life now, and is expecting a child. So it's the same thing here, really. I went together with a reporter. I did some pictures when I visited this guy, but then I know that, when I read the story, I see that I should have other pictures as well. So for example, he talked about his dreams when he was dreaming in the nighttime. So, and other things. So I decided to call him back and ask if I can come visit them when he was going to bed in the afternoon or evening. So I did that and got this picture. I followed him out in the forest when he was walking with his dog. So this tattoo, which I noticed was important in the story. So that's kind of how I work. I do shoot when I'm out with the reporter, but also sometimes go back to do more pictures if I see that there are elements in the text that really needs visualization, or the other way around, I have pictures that really need some text. And the other part of the story was about this family who lost their father and husband. He took his own life. He was also a drug addict. And so we followed them since, we met them first time last summer. And we went together with them when they were burying she was burying her husband in the graveyard. And then we also spent some time with her, a couple of times more, to interview her. And she went back where her husband used to live to visit his home. So I kind of follow this woman in these different places. And so this was done by me and Ronnie, and then I produced this feature myself, but I also work closely together with the art directors in VG, which is also on the team for the hub. So I talked with them about how to present, how can we do it, and we decided that as one guy doesn't live and I don't really have my own pictures of him, and the other guy is doing well now, we got private pictures of the two from when they were kind of on their feet, and I printed them out in Oslo. I brought the prints back here and I put them on the sofa and shot a picture of them, and used that as the beginning of the story, as an introduction. And then we kind of tell that one guy managed, the other guy didn't manage in the beginning, and then we start to follow these two stories. And the text jumps from this one guy to the other guy and back again to this guy. So it's kind of a challenge to kind of keep the reader in mode, and that the reader doesn't jump off because it gets too complicated. And that's why we use the pictures, quite a lot of pictures also, to kind of keep the reader in the right mode and in the right so the reader knows who am I reading about now? Is it him or is it her? Him, you know. So in this story, it was very helpful to have a lot of pictures, really, to manage to keep the focus on the right person in the story. And this is another example. This is the same project. It's a psychiatric story about people who got depressed or have trouble with depression, and how they managed during the lockdown. So it's the same thing. I went alone after the journalist had interviewed them, and I knew there were some key pictures needed for the story. So I went out and met them so I could shoot those pictures. But this is more of a kind of a portrait series more than a reportage, because it's really not much happening. So it's more up to me to find and do pictures of them that kind of can work nice together with the text. So since I'm still also a picture editor, I use some time on editing also. And when it comes to editing, there's not that much difference between editing for a newspaper or printed magazine than it is for online feature. But sometimes because there are limitations when it comes to the tool we use for presentation, sometimes I need to go in and look for other kind of pictures than that we already have. So it's important, of course, to organize your work when you work with the features, especially long online features, to get an overview. What pictures do you have? Am I on track with the story? How is the story? How is my pictures? Very often, I also think it's smart to take a break from your edit work and go back into the pictures after a couple of days. Then you suddenly see pictures that you might otherwise skip. Try also to be structured. What do you look for? What kind of images do I need? What do I miss? Maybe that's edit process is also about looking for pictures that you don't have and try to get them. And that's also why it's smart to look for mistakes, because when you see them, you might be able to, if you're not working in a faraway country with the story, if you work locally, you can go back and shoot more. And also let other people edit your work, let them look through your work, listen to what they think about the pictures. And edit also with the story in mind all the time. You know, is it the main character? Is there several characters? Are there no characters? Do I need a lot of overview pictures? All these things is important to have when you kind of edit your story. And as I said, it's important to edit for online, so the work should work online as well. And I think it's now we have to stop thinking that we edit for a spread in a magazine, basically, because the most important place now for the pictures and especially for editorial content is online. In VG, I don't work with the magazine anymore, the weekend magazine. I used to do that. Now I only work for the online format, and that's where I focus 100% of my time now. So choosing images is also about like building a narrative and telling the story with your work. So it's one thing is that it's important to work together with the text and to find pictures that can stay and work well with the text that's been written. But it's also important that your pictures tell a story by itself. And as I mentioned earlier, don't repeat yourself, don't select similar images. And if you're not happy, continue shooting instead of just handing in the edit you have. And also keep it short. To send 60 pictures, there's no point. If an editor doesn't ask for 60 pictures, I don't think you should send 60 pictures. This varies from media house to media house, how many pictures they ask for, but I never ask for 60 pictures. That's way too much. But I think also it's nice to be creative in the edit process and try to think differently than the classic way of building a story, because that could also help the reporter to write in a different way. And then it's very important when it comes to online is also to find a key image that's kind of the opening image, which is quite important for a story, because that's where you're going to get the attention from the viewer who open his mobile phone. And the viewer is on Facebook and Instagram and on Netflix and everything at the same time. So you really need to fight for the attention. So this is the first story I showed you, some of the pictures from that story. So I kind of select very few pictures. I know a bit what I should look for, because of course I've been there during the shooting and I remember what I shot and what I have. And very quickly I see that a portrait of him could be a good opening. And the reason is also that I think the portrait has something in it. It's a young boy and he looks vulnerable. It's in his expression. I think it seems that something has happened. So the selection of pictures is based on which pictures I think are the best. It's based on that there's a progress in the story. It's based on that there's something happening in the story. And it's partly also based on text that I read in the story, like the reporter writes about how he walks over leaves in the graveyard. So okay, it can be nice to have this picture of leaves when the text scroll over the picture and the image, And so I'll also look for details in the text that could be nice to visualize. And here is the kind of challenge, and also there's both good things and bad things about this. On a mobile screen, when you use a horizontal picture, originally as it is shot, this is the size of it on the left. You can see this, the size it will fill in an iPhone 12 or 11. So sometimes I choose to crop them if I don't kind of distort the image too much. So I do crop them into a medium format version, which then the image fill much more of the screen. Or you can choose to have the full screen image filling out the whole screen. The thing is, of course, that you crop the image crazy. It's so much that won't be shown on a mobile phone when you choose to have a full screen image. So that's the challenge with the pictures. So what I often do when I shoot is that a lot of the pictures that I think is going to end up as full screen, I need to have the main focus in the picture in the center of the picture, because it also needs to function or work on a laptop screen. And when it's a horizontal picture on a laptop screen, that horizontal picture is going to be cropped in the center to a vertical image on a mobile phone. And that's because VG's production system has some limitations still. Soon we're going to have an alternative that we can crop the pictures vertically for iPhones. And so it shows a different picture on an iPhone screen than on a laptop screen, for example. That's all depends on how the pictures have been shot. But until now, we kind of, when we want full screen images, we need them to be centered, or else, if you have a picture of a guy standing in the left corner of an image, and you see that on a laptop screen, and it's cropped to a vertical on a mobile screen, you won't see that person because he's outside the frame of the iPhone, or the mobile phone. So what kind of presentation should you go for? I mean, very often you want to put the reader into a specific mood in a way. Either is this for the reader, it's kind of important to know, is this a text-driven story for me? When the reader starts to see a story, is this a story that's going to show me mostly text? Is this a story that's going to show me mostly pictures? or only pictures? Is this a story with a lot of video or maybe only video? Is this a story that demands me to listen to sound? Because then I need my headphones and be prepared. I can't sit on the bus and suddenly tap sound when I sit among other people. Is this a long or is it a short feature? So it's important to remember what kind of audience you target and also what kind of mood you want them to be in. And you need also to, are you targeting young people, older people, women, men, or both? All these kind of things needs to be in your back head when, especially when I sit and produce this. So in VG, we have a lot of different kind of stories we produce. We can make photo essays, text-driven stories, video stories, full-frame stories on laptops, classic stories, text and images, chapters, graphics, or more handmade special features that's been coded from the bottom up. So this on the left is from the fires that was in California last year, which is more a classic picture story where we just have pictures and short text that kind of runs with the pictures on top of them. So here the whole text has been written after I select the pictures and build the story. Then we have a reporter who kind of go into the story and starts to write text. So based on the pictures you see in the story. And all these pictures you see here is basically vertical images, horizontal images that's being cropped on the mobile phone to verticals. There's other, of course, other media houses uses other ways of presenting pictures. This is WeTransfer, who use also a bit of text with this, but you see they kind of don't put the pictures on full screen, but leave them as square images on inside the phone screen. And this on the right is also a story I did on during the refugee crisis, where we kind of build up the same way as we did with the California story. It's basically pictures that's been selected, and a reporter then writes the story based on the pictures. And really, it's not like this. The text is being written out of what you see in the pictures. So the pictures tells their story, and then there's a lot of more information or other kind of information in the text that rolls over the pictures that kind of gives me more background, more in-depth into the story. And this is a story I did during the lockdown when my partner was pregnant. So I kind of followed her and my kids through her pregnancy until the birth of our kid. And this was also made with very short text and mostly images. And it was written in a diary kind of format. So here we were more free to use pictures that didn't need to, be exactly what you read in the text, or it didn't need to be that closely linked to the text. The main thing about this story was that it opens, of course, with us in quarantine, and it ends with the birth. That's the kind of the logic outcome of this feature. And here I very often also shoot, with the in back of my mind that this is going to be a lot of full screen pictures. So it ends when Stella comes home, and that's also at the end of the quarantine, or the lockdown in Norway. Then you have other stories we make that's more focused on text. This story you see now is basically built on, it starts with a kind of introduction in the beginning, which is visual. And then you start to read the text and together with pictures, of course, but it's quite a long story, which uses a lot of private pictures and pictures from their childhood and so on. The story on the right is part of, I think it was 13 or 14 chapters. The Plaza Mystery, it's called. It's about a woman who was found dead in a hotel in Oslo, which is also basically a lot of text and not a lot of visuals. So there I very often use energy on the start of the story, on the top. And when you have several chapters in the story, you really need to find a visual voice that can work for all of them, that binds them together. So that's why you kind of start with this red top, and you do that on every story that's been coming out. So it's 13 stories, 13 chapters, and you have the same kind of red color on the top, and you use that as a kind of a signal color through the whole feature. Then we also use video as a main part of stories. On the left side is last year, one of our freelance photographers, she portrayed herself. She has anxiety, and she had really hard times during the lockdown and the COVID-19. So she made a self-portrait in a way about how she's dealing with struggling with the COVID-19 and being sick like she is. So it's a very kind of personal story where she kind of films herself. And here it's based on video. So it's very short, few lines of text to each clip. And that's how the whole story is told. I think it works very well. It was also, a lot of people saw this story online. And this is, of course, when you do a video story like this, you really need to think about, okay, this is the way I should do this story. You can't kind of come back from a story and think, oh, I should do it in video, and then you don't have a lot of videos, so you just put things together and hope that this will work. You really need to go out, plan for, this is going to be a video-driven story, I need to film, and you need to plan what you need for this to work, you know. So she did a lot of video during this time when she was during the pandemic. So the one is from the national broadcaster in Norway. They also tell a story in a very, it's a very quick way of telling a story. It's based on video clips and still images and short texts. It's about this couple who lost their jobs because of the COVID-19, and they moved to a place where they could start renting out surfboards. And so the story is basically about them making their own small business out of renting out surfboards. And on the right, there's a more investigative journalism, where VG has been tracking down this guy who is taking young women's money by playing being a rich guy. He's renting private jets and flying around the world and asking women for money, and they kind of agrees to pay him a lot of money. And this is the way this story is told, with private clips from these women's mobile phones and online things they found on Facebook pages and other things. And also you see they use chat logs and other things to kind of visualize how he worked. So these are all kind of build up in the same way, but there are three very different stories. The first one, a very personal story, a self-portrait in a way. The other one is a more classic reportage story, used video and still images. And the third one is investigative piece, but told in a very effective way, using video and private pictures and private videos and so on. And then, of course, it's also, you have to, even though most people read things online, it's and on mobile screens, it's also a bit different. In the weekends, people might more often sit on laptops and read news and see articles. So it's also important that the pictures will work. You don't only focus on mobile phones. That's when I produce stories, I preview the stories on mobile screens always. But but you also need to know that the story will work as a widescreen story. So that's also, but mostly when you work for a mobile screen, it will also automatically work very nice for a laptop screen or a bigger screen. This is pictures done by André Lyon, who was in Brazil and covered the coronavirus and made this kind of picture stories from Brazil. And then there's more classical stories that's we also make, where we combine text and big pictures or picture galleries. So this is also André Lyon's story from the Amazon about COVID-19. And there it's a reporter making a story based on the photographer's images and what the photographer have experienced while he's been there. So here is a kind of a balance between text and pictures. And I also used some video clips because he had some strong scenes from funerals and so on. And I think that's nice to add to get even more sense of how it is there. So this was a well-read story, so it worked well. New York Times have this from Wuhan. It starts also with big screen pictures, and when you come down, it's more square pictures. But when you click them, you can get them up in. It doesn't work on my screen when I show it, but on my mobile phone, it worked to click the pictures, and then they turn up in vertical normal formats. But this is also a way, as I showed you in the beginning, when you use this kind of format on the pictures, they kind of fill more of the screen, and they don't turn into small icons only. And the last one is a feature I did some years ago, a couple of men who run the Amazon Jungle Marathon, which is also where I use both video and still images and also quite a lot of text. So this is more the classic way of stories. Then we also can, and that this is all about, when you start working with the story, you need to think about these things in advance. So this is a story about how Trump changed USA. And, to have a feature just, okay, this is how it changed USA, and then you start reading. It's kind of, it can work as a story, but I think when you start thinking about how to present this story online, you kind of need to find the best way of presenting it. And to do that, I decided to put this into chapters instead of just having one long text. So I used pictures and a text poster for every chapter. That kind of is an introduction for each chapter in the story. So it's environment, okay, then it's, I search for those kind of pictures, work, and then you go through some pictures of work in the US, and so on. I did that for all the different chapters in this feature. So that's also a way to organize a story online. And then it's, of course, also to combine both pictures, graphics, and text. This is we go through what Donald Trump tweeted and said publicly during the COVID crisis in the US. And so there's these graphics in between where his quotes are shown, and then we have some text over the pictures explaining what was going on in the US, what Trump did during those days, and so on. So this is kind of build up chronologically with dates and with the quotes and then pictures. And then you have, which we produce some of every year, but that's a lot more work to do when you're gonna code a feature from scratch. And that's not something I do or our team do. That's done by a different department in VG. So this is a story I did from the US 3 years ago, I think, where it's not used the same kind of system that I use when I build stories. So this is kind of has a unique code for this one feature. So this was done by the art director Simon, the layout of this, and then it was coded and because these kind of functions we don't have in the normal production system in VG. The possibilities to have like 4 pictures placed together like this, and when you see it on a mobile screen, they pump up after each other instead. These kind of things, we don't have that functions in the features that I made. And also to have videos playing automatically and things like this. It needs a lot of coding to make this work in the online newspaper. But the same here, you know, it's also about to combine the pictures and the text, and very often it's about, you know, when a reader sit and gonna scroll 20 times on their phone to get through your story, it's the same as when you read a book. There needs to be some cliffhanger somewhere where you kind of show the reader something, but not everything. Or there's something dramatically happened and the reader just have to continue scrolling to read more of the story. If the story is presented very flat or very chronologically and there's no surprises, I think a lot of people start reading and then, oh, this is boring, I exit the story. But if we manage to get the reader's attention and keep the reader's attention by using these kind of few things that grabs the attention and keeps it, I think you can kind of manage to get the reader through a long text also on a mobile phone. So when we work, there's so many different screen sizes to take care of. So, and that's basically not possible to take care of all the screen sizes. And these are the kind of softwares I use when I produce these features for VG. So I need to know quite a lot of different programs. So I use Photoshop to make the pictures, but also to make special, you know, more special design to the project. I use Apple Motion, which is kind of the same as After Effects, to make animations and things like that. And I also use Adobe Illustrator to make maps or other kind of graphics that's going to be used inside the feature. And also I use Photoshop, of course, to crop and check the pictures that they will work both on a laptop and on an iPhone if you use full screen pictures. And the Final Cut I use to edit video clips. I use them to put subtitles on if there are people talking in them. And I also use them to color adjust the video clips so it kind of sticks together with the images that's in the story. I mean, After Effects or Motion is a great program. It's very complicated. You can do a lot of things with it. You can do 3D animations and so on. I haven't learned so much. I'm sitting learning while I'm doing, so it takes some time. And then in Illustrator, very often we need maps inside the story, or we make symbols or elements that we're going to use inside a video or inside After Effects. And that's what you use Illustrator for. And then the publishing tools, there's a lot of different publishing tools, of course. We have something in VG called Create, but I know others use WordPress, there's Squarespace. So you really need to find the platform, online platform you like to work on. I mean, if you work for a media house, you will know maybe by asking what kind of platform they use, or if they code it from the very start to the end. But if you're going to present your own work for an editor and build it as an online, you have a story, a project you worked on for maybe half a year, it could be a good idea to put it into a website and to present it for an editor the way you think it should be presented. And that's like Squarespace is a very good platform for that. And so that's why also it's important for you as a photographer, I think it's important to sit and use these tools, let's say Squarespace or any other online platform. Use it and edit your story there and try and investigate and find ways to how your work can be presented online. Because that's also when you get a clear idea of how you could build it and how it will look. And also, that's also a good practice to see, do the story and the text work together with my pictures here? Is it a nice flow in the story? And there you can also check if you have a good variation, if you miss any pictures. So there's a lot of good things about using, let's say, WordPress or Squarespace to test your stories, to see if they work. And also it's a good way of learning how to photograph for online feature. So we also use, of course, a lot of measurements on the stories we produce. We can measure the reading time, the dropout rate, how long people read, how where in the story they exit the story, and the numbers we get back from each article, of course, give us insight into how we can make new stories and make them more efficient, or make the reader care even more. And that's also interesting. I mean, we doesn't use the reading numbers as the only guide to how we should make stories, because that could be scary, I think. But we use it as, because it's interesting to find out, is this something that works for the reader, or is this something that's just a pain in the ass for the reader? When it comes to online features, there's constant change. I mean, that's also in the production system of VG where I work. There's new things coming every month, so we have to learn or adjust, and that gives us new possibilities all the time. And that's both on the software side and also in the hardware side, with new phones and screens and new cameras. You know, suddenly you have this folding screens on phones. Okay, so how are people going to read your feature story when you can open your phone to be almost a big square? You know, is that going to challenge how we present the stories? So, and a story that we think is cutting edge 2 months ago, it might look old and strange today. So that's how it's fast it changed. And with the 5G network now being rolled out many places, it opens up for a much more and more heavy data consumption, meaning that we can make more videos, use more higher quality on pictures and so on. So there's a lot of things. And with a LiDAR scanner on iPhone, suddenly you can do 3D things. This is an example of what's been made in VG. This was a mudslide that killed 10 people outside Oslo just around Christmas time. And they use a combination here of graphics, which is kind of the main part of the story. But then they also include video, still images, and video portraits in this story. This is basically showing what happened to these houses that was standing where the mudslide happened. And we kind of get to see where people were, how they managed to survive, and yeah, and you get all these different kind of dramatic stories while you navigate through the scene where this mudslide happened. And a colleague of mine filmed portraits instead of shooting portraits, which I think also works very nice in this feature. So this is kind of, you know, this is coded from scratch. But when you get these new iPhones with 3D scanners, there's going to be more and more these kind of stories. You're going to see them more and more, and with real pictures, but just in 3D and so on. So the different kind of possibilities you have today, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, is going to look very different, I think. And this is another example of 3D that New York Times used, where you can really navigate through a room, which has been scanned down to the smallest detail. And you can kind of be in someone's house and explore the house and see what's lying on the table, what's under the sofa, what's on all kind of different places. So this is still demands a lot of work from the back end of in the newspaper, because there's a lot of coding. But soon there's going to be tools that allows us to present this kind of pictures without a lot of work. We don't need to use weeks to build up these graphics. It's going to be more automated, and it's going to be easier for people to make it. This is from Beirut, where they did this very interesting thing with a video, where they kind of made the video into single frames, where you scroll on the side, the speed of the video yourself. While you scroll, you kind of speed up or speed down the explosion, so you can see what really happened during the bomb, or not the bomb, but the explosion. Sorry. And then it's, of course, also it's opening up for, this is not really photography, this is much more graphics, but that's also, we see that that's also in many stories where it's not really that interesting to use pictures. Then we end up telling the stories in different ways. This is a colleague of mine, Simon, who made this kind of story about before the elections in the US, where you can go through graphics and see the prognosis of the different states and how they're doing in the different states and so on. So, I mean, there's basically unlimited possibilities, and that's what I like with this, is that you can also combine, you know, graphics with pictures, with video and all these things. But even though now when I show you all this, it's a bit chaotic, you know, because you see all these kind of different things. You see video, you see graphics, you see everything. You need to be consistent. And for photographers, of course, it's photography that's the focus. But what I mean is that there's a different way of thinking today than it used to be for a magazine, because there's other things to take care of and to remember. And not only the format of the mobile phone, but it's also, you have to choose, is this a story that's going to be better if I tell it with video than with photography? Is this a story that's going to be better if it's told by text and not that much pictures? Is this a story that's going to be better if I show close-up portraits of people on when people see them on their phones? Or is this a story that needs classic reportage pictures, which are going to turn out quite small on the screen, but the pictures are so important that they need to be there? There's so many questions you have to ask yourself when you are out doing a story, and that's something I'm eager to kind of talk to people about, because as a producer, I sit and have to think of these things every time I make a story online. I look for a specific kind of pictures, and sometimes I have them, sometimes I don't. And really, you see also on the success rate of a story, if there's been a lot of thinking in advance and the story has been planned well and you have good visuals, how the readers respond to it it's really interesting to see. So, I mean, people are really responsive for images and for good pictures. It just needs to be, the pictures and the text, if there are text, needs to go kind of hand in hand to manage to engage people in the right way. I don't know if you have on any questions. There's a question here about reading time. I mean, it depends on the length of the stories. Sometimes you have I'm here. Yeah. And sometimes you have, if it's a very long feature, the reading times goes up. But we see that when we do a successful picture story, that's basically just pictures and text over it. People stick to it. It's not that it's only 10-second reading time on a image story. It's people can spend minutes on a picture story as well, because you know they stop on pictures and look at them before they keep on scrolling. So, but reading time is in VG. We have a good score if it's 4 or 5 minutes reading time on a long feature. That's a good score. I mean, and that's basically because, you know, there might be 600,000 readers reading the story. And of course, there's people who go in and stay for 10 seconds, and there are people going in and stay for 10 minutes. So this is the average. There's a question here also about how much time I spend editing after shooting. And if I try to limit myself during production to avoid edit stress. It depends on video. I definitely I try to limit myself with the video, because that's, and now with new cameras shooting in 4 and 8K, it's a hell of work afterwards if you come back home with 500 video clips and you start to have to edit and go through everything. So in video, I try to limit myself. With the pictures, I never limit myself. I shoot and shoot and shoot. But very often when I work with the story, I have the story in the back of my head. So when I download the pictures and I start going through the pictures, I know where to look for the key pictures. And then I, of course, go through the rest also to see what I got and if there are other surprises there in a way. But I'm not limiting myself when I work on features. There's a different story, I think, if you shoot hard news and you have to send live from camera and back to the newspaper in seconds, then you have to really just get the material away. But when it's about features, we still have time to produce. It's not like we get the material in one day and then we publish the story the day after. Very often we use 2, 3, or 4 days on producing a feature after the pictures has been shot and the text is finished. So very often I use between 2 and 4 days producing a feature story. There's one, James, who asks for if I can elaborate on teamwork. Teamwork for us, it depends. But we have a photo department in VG where we have Anna Moore, who is in charge of the department. So often we talk together with her, who kind of also is in charge of which photographer should shoot which story. So we discuss the story with her. And then we have art director Simon and Torfinn, and they are both good at designing things. So I use a lot of time. I use a lot of time talking to them on ideas. We use a lot of time on ideas. And then it's also teamwork when we work closely with the reporters. So when I get the text, or even before they start writing the text, we can talk together about, okay, what's the important elements here? Where do we have the good pictures? Okay, could you please, when you write a story, be able to compose it in this or this way, because that would also work well with the picture. So that's kind of the ideal way of working. But very often also I get text, pictures, and video just bang into my computer, and I have to start from scratch and build the story based on what I got. And that's that's not the ideal thing, but that's very often also what happens. But the ideal thing is to really work in team, and both in advance to plan the story and to talk with the photographer and the reporter and the art director, and then also after to work together producing it. There's a question here on how I decide which medium to shoot, to use in the field, if I use video or photo or use both, and what equipment. I use a Canon 5D, and it's both video and photography in that. And when it comes to the question about shoot video or photos, it depends on the story. I think you have to decide in advance if you're going to shoot a video-driven story. That's what you focus on. Then you don't focus on the pictures. So I think that's important to remember, that you shouldn't go out there and try and do both as perfectly good, because that's not possible. So we have to decide in advance, okay, this is a video-driven story. We're going to do this on video. So that's what you're going to do. Or this is a mostly visual photography-driven story. Shoot pictures. But sometimes we use video clips in a story. That could be portraits, stage portraits. And instead then of shooting a picture of a guy or a girl, you put up a video camera on a tripod and you film a portrait in slow motion, for example, and then you use that as a portrait instead of a still image. But to use both video and images at the same time is almost not possible. So that's why I mean it's important to plan the work in advance. There's a question here to shoot whole scenes in one frame to give to the editor, to have the editor to give the editor choices, or to shoot landscape and portrait orientation to have control over the image borders. I think to start to shoot both is quite, that's as difficult as it is to shoot video and stills at the same time. I think I think it's important for you to remember that you don't need to know the media house and what limitations they have. For VG right now, it's like when we're going to use full screen pictures on mobile phones, it needs to be vertical picture, horizontal pictures, and they are automatically by the programs cropped to be horizontal on mobile phones in the middle center of the image. So that's why the main pictures that's going to be full screen, they need to be centered. The main character in the picture needs to be in the almost in the center of the picture, or else it won't work on mobile phones. So, but to shoot both, that's going to be more a question when you have an editing tool that kind of allows you to, or a program that allows you to upload a horizontal picture for web for laptops, and it allows you to upload portrait orientation pictures for mobile screens, and that's something that's we're going to get in VG as well also after a while. So then it's more up to you, depending on the media house you deliver to. If you work with a media house that can upload both, then I would maybe do the crop the verticals myself, so you get it exactly how you want it. Another question here, how do you, when you're, that's from, let's see here, no, I just have to see, yeah, there's a question here, how do you, when you've got enough pictures, when you can just kind of end the project and stop shooting, especially when you're working on a project that has a deadline? I think that's basically time that limits how much you can shoot and how long you can shoot. Like the features I showed you here today, where I worked with photography, I have a limited time. So it's really, I have 2 days to go out shooting. Okay, I used one day shoot this person, another day shoot this person. So it's, but we see if you work on personal projects, of course, it's a different story. Then you can continue and continue and continue shooting, and you just have to decide and put your own, set your own deadline. But I need, if a photographer is out shooting a story for, and I'm going to produce the story, I need to see the pictures 4 or 5 days before it's going to be published. So I can go through the pictures and see the selection, and even earlier is better, could be better also, because then we can ask photographers maybe to go out and do more pictures if I see there's something missing. But at least I need 4 or 5 days of production. So that's, so let's say I'm going to produce a story that's going to be out on Saturday. I would need the pictures on Monday. Yeah, there's James here asks if I could elaborate on my thoughts about the process of images and text together. That's this is also depending on where you work and what kind of media house. In Norway and in VG, we very often work in teams with journalists, and we like to present the stories in as a unit. So the pictures and the text kind of flows together. So for me, it wouldn't a lot of the stories we produce wouldn't work, I think, if we had a story about a young boy or a group of young boys, and the pictures were not really about that. That would be some very different kind of pictures. So we tie the text and the pictures very close together. And I think that's also about getting the reader's attention. I mean, when I read a story, I would really like to see these people I read about. So that's why we work so closely with journalists all the time. It's because we want the photographers to get involved in the story, and to be part of the story in the way of developing the story in the correct way, and to look for picture that it has possibilities for good pictures and reportage pictures. So that's how I think about text and pictures together. It's important both when it comes to shooting, but it's also important when it comes to producing the story, because when a reader sit and read a story about a young woman and she is having some kind of trouble, I really want to have pictures of her, and I want the photographer to take me into her world, as the same as the text is doing. There's also a question: when designing for the vertical phone screen, do you account as well for the situation where the viewer flips the phone horizontally and try to have specific design? No, because we can measure this, and we see that almost no people flip the phone horizontally. Most people keep the phone up like this and sit like this and read. And so we have stopped using functions where we say, please flip the phone horizontally to see this story, because people don't do it. And that's also because, almost all the big apps on iPhone is based on scrolling down. You have Instagram, Facebook, all these apps. Snapchat is more based on horizontal, but a lot of the biggest apps, newspapers, New York Times, all the newspapers are based on scrolling like this way. So that's why we don't do it. I don't think that central composition is going to be like a new standard for photographers, because I think there's a question here about that, if all photographers would need to go and do centered pictures, because it's going to be cropped in the center for a phone, for phones, because there's going to be, the tools we use to present stories and make stories going to change. So I mean, now there's a limitation there. Next year, we're going to be able to upload a horizontal picture for laptop screens, and we can upload as a different kind of picture, a vertical one or a portrait mode picture for mobile phones. So I mean, and then we can crop the pictures. Of course, we need to crop some pictures to make them full screen on iPhones or on mobile phones. But I don't think you need to, it's not going to change the way we shoot I think it's more about changing the way we think as photographers when we're out shooting. You always, it's also a question if I always prepare a storyboard before I shoot. What kind of tools do you use? Share visual IDs and storyboard to work together remotely? We use Google disk drives to share things in VG. Sometimes I use storyboards. I'm very basic. Because I work on screens all the time, I like to use pen and paper and draw. So if I have an idea of how to present the story, I get it on paper, and then I try to move it into the screen when I see I have something. Before shooting, it's not that much about creating a storyboard. It's much more about knowing what the text is about and knowing what is the key elements in the story will be, because that's something I can then go out and look for when I shoot the story. Some people might say, isn't that very limited when you're a photographer and you like read the text and you have to follow some parts of the text? But for me, the text kind of opens up people for me, because the reporter might have seen or talked about things that I wouldn't talk about with these people. So for me, it's just to get an even wider view of the people I'm going to meet and shoot. So I meet them and I talk to them and I have ideas on what to shoot and what they're doing and follow them and things like this. And then I get ideas from the journalist and from the text. And when I get back home, and if things have happened that doesn't really fit together with the story, I might ask the reporter you should write it in a different way here or do it differently here, because I have pictures and pictures of this and this. What are your main, this is Benas asking, what are your main arguments that this format is worth the additional finance and effort when it comes to investing in interactive and digital story production? I mean, that's, for us, it's basically worth every penny, because, we are the biggest media house now in Norway, VG, and people go to VG for news updates, live news, but they also go to get background stories, feature articles, and so on. And, if we're gonna, it's important to be in the front of the technology, because the advertisers go where the people go, and the people go where they have the best experience of reading. So I mean, that's kind of, you're kind of forced to it almost. To make these investments in production tools for the newspaper. And there's Paul. Hi, Paul. I know you from before. You were in the workshop. I hope you're doing good. Can you talk a bit about how all this more wide-ranging work that is not standard photography day rates affects how photographers are paid? I would say in VG we do it. We do the same now as we did when we had we hired photographers for the printed magazine. It's we hire photographers for daily basis, so they work 7.5 hours a day, and they're paid for that. But of course, so it's more about what the photographer can squeeze into a limited time. So we don't pay if a photographer works for us for 7 hours and the photographer delivers video and pictures. We don't pay extra because he's delivering video, but we pay extra if it demands more time for him to do video. So it's all about time. And I know that many papers maybe ask for more today than they did before, because they ask you, can you go out and shoot this story? It's a one-day shoot. And then they say, and by the way, we also need video. And you know that in these, let's say 7 hours, I'm not able to do both, but they won't pay you more to do both. So we're kind of pushed to maybe do less photography or get less time to shoot. And that's of course of course affects how photographers are paid in the end. But in VG we kind of plan this in advance very often if we need video in a project or if we just need still photography. And then we also know that, okay, we need to hire this photographer for 3 days because we're going to have video and still and blah, blah, blah. So it's based on planning, really. Yes, I think I have been through all the questions here. If there's no more questions, I'm gonna end this talk now. Please feel free to drop an email if you have more questions or you suddenly come up with a question that you didn't ask. You can find me on my website, espenrasmussen.com. There you have my email and other things as well. But if I think this is it, I will say thank you to all of you for joining today. There's new seminars coming up on 7 Interactive every week now. It's a lot of amazing and good stuff there. So you can go in and see recordings of it, or you can see a lot of good content there. So thank you, everyone, and have a good day.